Well, believe it or not, there is a break in interest rates, but it's not going to last. There's a slight drop in interest rates right now, and if you have to buy a house this summer, if you got to do a refi, there's no upside in waiting. Look, if you're purchasing a new home, refinancing your existing home, securing a VA loan or reverse mortgage, do what I always have done. Call Team Hochberg, a trusted local lender. Liam is a trucker. He called for a free consultation after being charged crazy high closing costs by the rocket-loving lending people. Team Hochberg loan officer Johnny Hendrickson explained the costs that the rocket-loving lenders charged him. And the last time he refinanced, he also needed some help, and Liam got it from the fine people at Team Hochberg. The point to all of this is, look, you got to pay off debt, secure a full closing cost credit, can lower your payments, but you can only do it when you're doing it with the right people, and that's not the rocket-loving lenders. No, it's Team Hochberg. Liam got a great ride, not the rocket ride that took him nowhere with the ridiculously high closing costs. He got the Team Hochberg ride, and it saved him a bunch of money, over $3,500 a year. Listen, for you that listen to this podcast or listen to me on the radio on WLS, you probably already know how much Team Hochberg can help, but know that it's worked for my family, and I recommend it to yours. You at least ought to check it out. Team Hochberg can help you avoid getting violated by lenders charging ridiculously high closing costs, but they can't help if you don't call. 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com, 855-563-2843, or visit 56david.com. It's lower.com, an equal housing lender, NMLS number 1124061. This is Live from my office. Hi, I'm Steve Cochran. Glad to be back with a new episode of Live from my office. Now that we have the radio show up and running in some form, and frankly, I think it's pretty good form. And I do hope you'll listen. For those of you who missed the memo, I am now doing the morning show every morning from 5:30 to 9 on the legendary Big 89, 890 WLS. Every morning, this show is going to do what, frankly, no other show does, and that's provide a political middle, a place where the right and the left are going to get slapped around by me, a place where the right and the left are going to get heard fairly by me and my guests as well. But it's not just politics. It's a funny show. It's always going to be funny. It's always going to be local. And there's going to be good news because everything doesn't suck. So we're bringing you good news. We're bringing you a fair take on politics with actual truth. And we're bringing you funny and entertaining every day. So give it a listen, 5:30 to 9 on WLS. In the meantime, each Wednesday podcast episode of Live from my office will give you highlights from the radio show. But every Monday, we're going to get you a new episode. We're actually putting this up on Monday, July 11th, and that means a new episode today. But there's a bump in the road. The bump in the road is I've got COVID. That's today's episode. Dr. Kevin Most is back, and he's talking me through my COVID ride, and hopefully you'll benefit from the information he brings. This BA4 and BA5 variants are a big deal, and they're a serious deal as far as being contagious. They're not making people as sick, but I can tell you after 5 days of this, it's not a lot of fun, and you don't want it. So hear Dr. Most and his advice to me coming up on this episode of Live from my office. As always, brought to you by Team Hochberg, our charter title sponsors, and the good people at Cantini Golf as well. We thank them for sponsoring Live from my office. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Dr. Kevin Most and me next on whatever state of health I may or may not be in right after this. It's amazing how fast the golf season is flying by. Have you played Cantini Golf? Do you play it regularly? Oh, wait, I've got something for you. It's the Frequent Fairways program. There's great Kemper Sports golf courses all over the country, and this is a new loyalty program from Kemper Sports, the folks that manage Cantini Golf. And you can golf your way across Chicagoland at 9 great public courses, including Cantini, my personal fave, and in all likelihood yours too. Every round you play is going to get you a new reward in the app. You can get Titleist Pro V1 golf balls, Pro Shop discounts, golf cart rewards, even a new Titleist TSI Series driver. All you have to do to join the program is download the Frequent Fairways app today. If you go to cantinigolf.com, there's plenty of information there for Frequent Fairways. And man, make a tee time. When you're on that site, make a tee time at cantinigolf.com or pick up the phone and call them at 630-260-8197. Cantini Golf, never been better, and killing it for the good people at Kemper Sports. Again, cantinigolf.com or 630-260-8197. Sign up, get the app, be a member of Frequent Fairways today. All right, this is Live from my office. My name is Steve Cochran. You know who you are. And the guest is Dr. Kevin Most. Doc, how are you?
Steve, I am doing great. And you're giving us a little Lou Rawls voice here. You must be a little bit under the weather.
You'll never find. It's crazy, but after a 2.5-year run of some really good luck, I now have COVID.
Wow.
Dun, dun,
yeah,
dun.
Well, you've been very fortunate to have been able to dodge it for 2.5 years. So good for you. Where did you pick it up?
I was in Michigan with the family. We had a kind of a family vacation outside of Traverse City and had a whole bunch of people. And, you run into the regulars that live in that area. And somewhere along the line, somebody was good enough to pass it along. But I've been so lucky, and I've been really careful. I've helped get the hand sanitizer industry in business and keep them in business. I've worn a mask in many circumstances long beyond where everybody said you didn't have to wear them anymore. Certainly tried to stay away from folks who were sick and, just tried to be smart about it. But you tell me, that's not enough to not have had COVID until now. You got to be lucky as well as careful, right?
Yeah. Lucky, careful, and vaccinated is going to be your best. But
that's it.
But unfortunately, the strains that we're seeing right now, the BA4 and BA5, we're not seeing a lot of overlap with natural immunity. So luck and vaccination and mitigation is going to be really the big thing that's going to keep you from getting infected at this time. But it's a nasty one out there right now. And Steve, look at what's going on in New York. We're seeing positivity rates of 25%.
So
remember, we were down at 1% not too long ago here in the city of Chicago.
The good news is, even though this thing really seems to be just a raging in regards to how contagious it is, it's not making people as sick. Is that still true?
For the most part, the infection, if you are vaccinated or if you've been previously infected, I don't want to say milder because it's not a fair term to use, but in the medical side of it, it is milder. In other words, we're not looking at hospitalizations. We're not looking at putting people on ventilators. Now, the individuals who have it, like yourself, say, well, don't use the word mild. I had 102 fever. I had body aches. I had cough. I'm short of breath. That's not mild. But we use mild when we're comparing it to original COVID, Delta variant, those that made the big impacts with hospitalizations and deeper infections.
So I'm happy to talk about me here in the hopes that it will benefit other people. So I got the scratchy throat. This goes back, we're recording this on Sunday, July 10th. This goes back to last Wednesday. I had the scratchy throat. Symptoms may have even been by Tuesday and kind of ignored them. And finally took a test on Thursday when I was starting to feel kind of poor. And that's when the test came back positive. And I was even surprised then because I've had this blood clotting condition in the past and I'm overweight and just in general, because I've had some things that would be concerning, and I'm 61 years old. Another doctor at Northwestern who I see put me on Paxlovid. Explain what Paxlovid is.
Yeah, so Paxlovid is an antiviral medication that we're very fortunate to have. So if you have ever had the flu and you've taken Tamiflu, you might have heard that. That's a drug that it really doesn't kill the virus, but it really shortens the duration of the illness. So for typical influenza, you're going to have influenza symptoms for 10 days. If you take Tamiflu, you're going to have those symptoms for 6 or 7 days. Same here with Paxlovid. So not only will it slows down the replication of the virus, so we don't have as much damage done to the lungs, to the heart, to wherever the virus is sitting at that point, and it allows your symptoms to be resolved. Amazing how people feel really often after a day or two of the medication, because it's stopping the replication of the virus. Now, that being said, Steve, probably the most important thing that you just told people is you got to make sure that you get on this within the first 5 days of symptoms, because after that, it really doesn't carry much weight, because the virus has replicated to a point where it's going to do as much damage as it wants to do at that point.
So in my case, you couldn't be more right, because what happened was Friday, again, this is Sunday, so this is 48 hours ago, was clearly the worst day. I never really got short of breath, but I had the full-on flu symptoms, the muscle aches and the hard cough and nasty headache and a fever and all those things. And through the first couple of doses of Paxlovid into yesterday, there was definite improvement. And by today, even though I don't sound great, I feel pretty good. I mean, I still got these waves of fatigue that we've been talking about with COVID for 2 years, but it's amazing how fast it seems to have worked.
Right. And interesting, too, you're feeling better, which is great. And what we have to remember is this is stopping the progression of the illness as well. That's probably the most important thing. So although you said, I still feel congested, I'm still kind of, my voice, that's there. That's the inflammation. That will go away with time. But it hasn't advanced on, which is exactly what the drugs showed in all the studies, showed 90% protection from going on to hospitalizations, even those with comorbidities, and a decrease in the symptoms often within 48 to 72 hours.
So the one thing we've heard about this, and it even happened to Dr. Fauci, is it's really strong, it works, it's very effective, but depending on where the virus is in your body and how active it is, you can have a rebound effect. That seems to be hyped more than you're seeing it in reality. In other words, the rebound doesn't happen that often?
Correct. We have to remember, when we talk about rebound, it means, did I get infected again, or are my symptoms still now rallying? In other words, is the virus still in my body, and now since I'm done with the medication, is the virus there and starts to replicate again? So although it's called a rebound, we're not exactly sure if it's a continuation of the same infection, or perhaps you've been reinfected. So we know that it happens, but it happens in a very small number of people. But when it happens, it gets a lot of attention. So certainly one that we look for, we tell patients to look out for, because we want to make sure that we stay on top of those individuals if they do have the rebound of the symptoms.
So the only other thing I'd alert people to when it comes down to it is not everybody's eligible for this. It's not an unending supply, but there are an awful lot of people who would fit into this. So what are the basic parameters on why your doctor might consider it?
Well, Steve, the way you asked that question, too, is very interesting, because I'm not sure if people saw in the news last week, but the FDA has now approved this drug to be distributed or dispensed by a pharmacist without a physician order.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, yeah. So this is very unusual, but it certainly is happening now. And we call it test to treat. And the reason we do it is we have this small window of opportunity to treat this, right? So let's say you got pushed back a day, Steve, and you were on Wednesday, Thursday, and then you tested on Saturday, and then Sunday you said, I should probably try to get into my doctor. Well, he's so busy on Monday, I didn't get in until Tuesday. He said, gosh, that's too bad. Had we seen you a couple days ago, we could have used this medication.
Right.
So what they did is they took this medication and said, all right, under the right circumstances, as long as the pharmacist is going to check to make sure the kidney functions are fine, they're going to look for any other medications they're on to make sure there aren't any other drug interactions. They know that they have a positive test. It's safe for them to start it. So it's going to actually make it much easier and quicker for patients to be treated earlier, which two things happen. One, patients' symptoms get down quicker. They feel a lot better. And probably most important is they don't have that opportunity to spread the illness for 2-3 days waiting to get into a doctor's office.
All right, so let's talk about the contagious part of this. This is BA4, BA5, the latest variant, and we know this won't be the last one. When are you most contagious, and is it different for this than it's been in the past?
No, still about the same. Really, a day before you're contagious. We know that just from studies where people say I had no symptoms whatsoever, but they exposed themselves to somebody who then tested positive. But probably the most important is those first 2 to 3 days. And that's why getting on the Paxlovid to slow down that replication is important, because the lower viral load, the less opportunity you have to spread it. But certainly for someone like you, those first couple of days were the time where I'd be like, wow, I'm glad I was wise enough to know that this might be it. And I separated myself from my family. I took better mitigation. I wore a mask. I did all the things that I should do to protect others. And that's probably the biggest message there. Early on in the infection, don't think of just yourself. Think of those around you.
And in regards to how long you should be shut down, since I was feeling better today, I actually did another over-the-counter test, and I tested positive again. In other words, I still have COVID in my system. Does that tell you anything about still being contagious, or is that a separate discussion?
Totally separate discussion. So it's really interesting. Let's say your symptoms are completely gone tomorrow, the next day. You could still take a test and test positive. And you could take a test for the next 20 days and still test positive. In other words, the virus may still be present in your body to make the test turn positive, but you're not shedding the virus, you're not spreading the virus. As a matter of fact, your body has shown that it is fine. But we do know that people can test positive for well after the infection has run its course and is out of your, quote unquote, out of your system as far as your symptoms are.
So the contagious part of this really comes down to what we've known forever about cold and flu, and that is if you have a fever, you're probably making other people sick.
Yes. Good possibility that if you have a fever or you're coughing, you are certainly having an opportunity to spread that illness to those who spend any time around you at all.
Once the symptoms start to dissipate, do they continue to trend in that direction? Obviously, we talked about the rebound. That could still happen. But once they start to go away, do they continue to go away?
Yeah, 100%. And especially if you're on Paxlovid, because what's done, it's slowed that virus from replicating, so it's not allowing it to go any further. It's not going to go further into the bronchioles to cause more of a cough. It's not going to sit more in your sinuses. It's going to slowly stop replicating and decrease that replication as your immune system fights it off. So once you start getting improvement of your symptoms, chances are you're going to continue and probably rapidly continue to improve over the next couple of days.
The only other thing I would say about Paxlovid is it tastes really bad. And I don't mean when you take it, but it does have sort of a tinny aftertaste. It's a minor problem, obviously, compared to all the good it's doing, but just as a heads up for people. Yeah.
And you know what? It's a good point, because we see people stop medications because of quote unquote side effects. And really, I think you have to make sure that you don't understand, make sure they understand that the side effect versus just the chemistry of the medication. So if you get that metallic taste, okay, understand it's only going to be there for a short period of time. But if you say, hey, you know what, instead of taking these pills, I'm going to stretch them out, that's not the way the drug was designed. So you have to, I mean, I hate to say suck it up, but you have to suck it up for those couple of days, knowing that that aggravating little taste in your mouth may prevent you from having long COVID in the future, and really will get you feeling better much quicker.
Yeah, it's just not that big a deal. You know.
Correct. Yeah.
So what does this say then going forward? I have not had my second booster. And, it's been a timing thing and all the other excuses that people want to throw at it. I got the first two vaccines and was timely on both of those. Got the booster in a timely fashion, but never got the second booster to this point. I think it's important you reiterate that we don't believe having COVID provides immunity going forward. But let's say I have BA4, BA5 now. Does that give me any level of immunity, and should I still get that second booster?
Yeah, you're in a very interesting position again because of what the FDA decided last week. So the FDA has come out and said, you know what, the booster that we are going to start to produce is going to have the original COVID vaccine, and we're going to put BA4 and BA5 in that booster. so that you're going to get a shot similar to what you get for the flu shot, where we have 4 different strains within the one shot. This one is going to have 3 different strains, the original plus BA4, BA5. So I'm looking at you and I'd say, well, wait a second. You've already had the shot. You had your first booster. Now you had the infection. So you can have some natural immunity. You actually have bought yourself, 90 days, essentially. The next 3 months, we would show that you still would have great immunity to BA4, BA5 because of your natural immunity. Your timing may work out well so that you don't need to get a booster now and then get a booster again in, late September, early October when this new vaccine comes out.
And we'll be looking at flu shots then too, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's probably one of the bigger things that people have to understand. We were pretty lucky. We were extremely lucky 2 years ago, right? And people say, well, gosh, look, that we didn't have a flu season. It's like, well, it just shows you the importance of what we did for mitigation because influenza was still out there, but just in very low numbers. This year we had a little bit of a flu season, but not bad. But as we start to go back to normalcy and people are traveling more, you're going to see influenza come right back up. So in the fall, it's probably going to be 2 shots. You're going to get a flu shot and you're going to get the COVID shot. Eventually, hopefully we'll have a universal shot that'll take care of both, but that probably won't be for a few years.
So let's make sure people understand the basics here again. Is BA4, BA5 very, very contagious at this point? If you have it like I've had it, you need to isolate. And the isolation rules, as we followed them, by way of the CDC's, day 0 is when symptoms develop. Stop me and correct me if I'm wrong on any of these.
Oh, you're going good. Yep.
So day 0 is when you have symptoms. And then 5 days beyond that, as long as you've been fever-free for 2 days, you're probably not contagious at that point. Doesn't mean you're not careful, but it does mean that if you have to leave the house in a mask and you're careful for some reason, you can go do it. But you still would advise isolation for how long to really be safe?
I mean, if you're really safe and you're around somebody with comorbidities, whether they be cancer or someone that has heart disease, I would still look at, if you want to be ultra conservative, you go 10 days, you're going to be fine. All of the studies have shown that. For the most part, people really, in a lot of work sites now, have gone down to the 5 days. So, anywhere between 5 and 10 days, I think is going to be fine. Anything shorter than 5, I certainly would not recommend. And really don't use the positive test as your decision as to whether or not you can do things. Because like I said, you may test positive for a few weeks.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And we're not going to know all we need to know about this disease that is now a part of our lives and will continue to be a part of our lives. I mean, it's going to be a generation before we really have a full body of information on this.
It will be. We learn things every day. Like you said, this isn't going to be the last variant. And the sad thing is how much BA4, BA5 is out there, because the more virus is out there, the more people that are infected, the higher the chance for the next variant. So you want to decrease that as much as you can. But if you look at what's going on in the UK right now and look what's going on in New York, that's very concerning that a new variant could easily come out of there. And if it doesn't even, look at us. We've had positivity rates in the single digits for a long time. Is New York going to follow? Are we going to follow New York and see our positivity rates go back up, to 25%? Their Department of Public Health just recommended indoor masking and outdoor masking if you're in large groups.
Yeah, how about that? I will say this, for people that had not gone through it, like I had not gone through it, you don't want it. I mean, I would consider the case that I've had as being quite mild compared to what I've heard, compared to what people had prior to the vaccine, certainly. But even after the vaccines, people had it much, much, much worse. But I've only had the flu a couple of times in my life, and it felt very much like the flu. It knocked me out for a solid 24 hours, maybe longer. And if I didn't have Paxlovid, I imagine those symptoms would have lingered.
100%. And I think, we're comparing this to the flu, and that's a good analogy and a good comparison, because having influenza, for people who had full-blown influenza, certainly do not like it. I kind of roll the dice a little bit further and say we can compare those two just based on this easy infection. However, be really, really careful, people, because there's no such thing as long influenza. The chance of getting influenza that's going to give you persistent symptoms further on is not there. But long COVID is really there, and it is very present, and it is something that we're concerned about, and we're doing more research on how to identify people who might be at higher risk, and again, how to treat each of these different areas of long COVID.
It's interesting to go through some of the symptoms that we've been talking about for these last 2.5 years and have them happen now. And by the way, this should concern the people at Cumulus Media and WLS who just hired me. But that brain fog thing, I'm only a couple, 3 days, 4 days in, 5 days, whatever it's been now. And, I'm struggling to remember things and some of the things that ought to be instantaneous. And I'm going, well, I probably haven't slept enough. Well, the truth is I've slept a lot and I feel like I want to sleep more. So, I almost feel like I'm in this perpetual state right now of that first few minutes after you wake up where your head's not clear. I mean, that's the only analogy that comes to me.
Yeah. And brain fog certainly is one that we're concerned about, because it impacts occupation, impacts the health of the individuals and the healthier family decisions that are made. So certainly brain fog is one that we're definitely concerned about. But we're also concerned about individuals who get COVID a second or third time and reinfection, and now increase the chance of them doing further damage to their lungs, increase the chance for further damage to their heart. And those are the problems that we look at when we're saying, oh, I had COVID, I don't have to be worried about this. No. Large VA study that came out last week showed that those who get reinfected have a much higher rate of long COVID, even if they have a mild case of BA4, BA5. That should get all of our attention to make sure that we still do as much mitigation as we possibly can to protect ourselves and stay lucky.
So just to wrap this up, and one other piece of basics that I think is important, you made the point a long time ago. A lot of us didn't know why there were 2 OTC tests in each one of the packages. And you taught me, well, it's because you're supposed to take the test a second time after you get your first result. So the first time I took it, I had a negative result. And then I took it the second time, and it was positive. The positive one, assume you have it, and then react accordingly after that. Correct?
Correct. Positive trumps a negative when you have symptoms as well. And there's that uncertainty. When do I test? Should I test today? Should I wait a day? Should I see what the symptoms are like tomorrow? So individuals who are cautious may test early and get a negative test because there's not enough viral load, but often by that next day, they're going to test positive. So like you said, it's exactly why we have 2 tests. And it reinforces in our mind that a simple negative test is not the ultimate decision when someone has symptoms and has been potentially exposed to COVID.
So do you call the doctor so that you have proper information that we have another positive? Let's say you're a healthy person, relatively speaking, or you don't have any of the comorbidity issues or the higher risk factors. Do you involve the doctor or do you write it out?
No, you should call the doctor. Certainly let him know, because he may know more about your health than you know about your health.
Well, let's hope so.
He may have other concerns. And he may say, no, I want you on this medication. We have a small window. Get to the pharmacist and, let's get this. I'll call it in. Or if you say, hey, I tried to reach my doctor and couldn't, go into the pharmacy. Now, people have to understand who's listening to this. You get a positive test, you're not running into the pharmacy and saying, here, give me this. The pharmacist is going to want to see your medical records. They're going to want to know some results of some blood tests to make sure that your kidney functions are okay. So certainly people who have MyChart or have access to their clinical record, make sure you bring your phone in case the pharmacist wants to see some information, and your medication list if it's not a pharmacy you normally go to.
So I can say this with confidence, not just because you're my friend, but as a doctor who I've counted on for a very long time. If any portion of the show from this point forward is less than great, it's not me, it's the brain fog. Is that your official medical opinion?
Well, I was going to say that right out of the box. I thought we should have opened with the brain fog so that people knew that through the entire show instead of listening to the first
That's true.
20 minutes.
That's true. I should have had a brain fog clause in the contract I signed.
Yeah.
Well, we hope this helped. I mean, the reason to talk so publicly about something as private as my own personal health is because I think it's important that people know, by way of witnessing it, what it feels like if you haven't had it and what's going on now, that you can take this information and move forward with it in a positive way for yourselves. That's why we do this constantly, and that's why, Doc, you're such a valuable resource, because you've laid it out there for us for years, and I couldn't thank you enough.
Well, Steve, I think the importance, too, is people hearing, you and I talk in general terms of, hey, this may happen or this may happen. And, for them to hear firsthand what you are personally going through and what you are personally feeling is I hate to say it's a testimonial to the infection, but it is. So we could talk about, here, I can give you all the statistics of symptoms, but now they can hear you personally saying, this is what I've suffered through. This is how I'm feeling. And that hits home when people hear that from somebody that they trust and someone that they listen to.
So take care of yourselves. Nobody's ever going to be a better advocate for you than you. And trust your medical professionals and the advice that they give you and act on it. Dr. Kevin Most, Northwestern Medicine, Central DuPage Hospital, and all the other outlets you serve. Thank you, my friend.
Steve, final word would be, everybody, please be careful out there right now. We do not want to be in a New York situation where we're back wearing masks. So we have the opportunity to squelch this and quiet it down as much as we can. But we all have to own part of that by stopping the spread and washing your hands and doing everything else. But please, we do not want to be at 25% again.
Amen to that. Be smart, folks. It's for everybody, you included. More of Live from my office coming up next. Thank you to our charter sponsor. That's right. He's our charter sponsor and our title sponsor, David Hochberg and Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. I was talking to David Hochberg about these times in which we live, where the Fed continues to raise rates. That's not expected to change. It puts a real squeeze on mortgages and refis because those interest rates, they keep going up. So Team Hochberg, David Hochberg, what are you telling people?
I'm telling everybody right now, if you need a mortgage, your best play would be to take out an adjustable rate mortgage, also known as ARMS. You'll start reading stories and hearing horrific stories about how dangerous ARMS are, which is a ridiculous statement because ARMS are perfect for short-term plays. If you know that your son or daughter are going to be graduating high school and you're going to be putting a for sale sign up in 5 years and you want to pay off debt, you want to pay off some credit card debt that you've accumulated because of COVID and because of the $5-6 a gallon gas, adjustable rate mortgage is a perfect product.
It's 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. He'll guide you through these difficult times and make sure you're saving the most money possible. And again, waiting is not your friend because the Fed has their mission, and that mission may not match with yours. 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. Thank you, Team Hochberg, our title sponsor on Live from my office. All right, important stuff there. And I have to tell you, I feel dramatically better thanks to the Paxlovid that's out there, the antiviral that Dr. Most discussed. But a few things you need to keep in mind. When you do test positive at home for COVID, definitely let your doctor know. Even if you're just going to ride it out, let your doctor know. Your doctor knows what your health profile is, can give you some advice and tell you whether or not you're eligible for something like Paxlovid. But as Dr. Most said, the best case scenario is it's going to be available at the pharmacies and everybody could get it from there and get after it because it's made a huge difference for me. I don't feel great, but I certainly don't feel as bad as I could have. So enough about COVID for now. Go to the show notes and you'll see some of the other tips summarized from Dr. Kevin Most. But feel free to share this episode. I hope you will share them all, but share this episode with others as well so they have the information you have and everybody's up to date on what we're dealing with now in the world we live in where COVID apparently is always going to be a part of it for us. Isn't that terrific? Can't thank Dr. Most enough. He's great. Can't thank Ross Cochran enough because he's the guy that puts this all together. Thank you, Ross. and can't thank you enough for listening. Another brand new episode next Monday, WLS highlights on Wednesday, and a brand new Deep Six coming up this Friday, all during the week of July the 10th and 11th. And I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're here. We're blessed, and I'm very appreciative of your support. Download, rate, review, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening to Live from My Office.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event, and occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to cochranshow.com for more.